Welcome to the Fence and Deck Mastery Podcast, where we discuss cutting-edge techniques, industry trends, and business insights to take your fence or deck company to the next level and dominate your competition. Let's go into the Legacy Decks Academy stuff and talk a little bit about that. So when you got that started, I mean, what really made you decide to do that? Like inspired you to create that type of group?
Wow, what inspired me to do it? So that's a great question. Man, I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I mean, literally started off cutting grass when my dad started it, my brother and I, when I was 15, 16 years old in high school. I've been very unemployable for a long time. As an entrepreneur, we're a unique breed, right?
Crazy.
We feel like if we just work hard enough for long enough, someday there's going to be this abundance of time and money to enjoy, right? The challenge is for me anyways, someday was just never coming. I was constantly hustling and barely probably not even making anywhere near what I could make if I went and worked for somebody else.
Yeah.
That's the reality of most of the people that I talk to, is they're willing to work twice as hard, twice as long for half as much pay, but it's their baby, right?
Yeah.
And so
you don't have to listen to anybody.
Yeah. So I guess the biggest inspiration for me to start the academy was I had somebody that I hired that came alongside as a mentor to me and showed me how to actually create a business, not just a job for myself, which is really what I created. A really low paying, crappy hours, terrible boss. That's what I had. And so I started on this journey probably 5 years ago. Literally, that's as recent as this is, and built a business operating system that didn't require me. And out of that, I got to the end. I say the end, I'm still in it, but probably about 2.5 years ago, I got to this point where the business didn't need me anymore. I looked around and everybody else was dealing with the fires and making the sales and dealing with the customers. And it got to a point where customers didn't know who I was anymore. I was like, this is a really weird feeling, right? Because the other thing, a lot of entrepreneurs, they want to be the hero, come in and solve all the problems and make the big sale. And so you got to put your ego down and put it aside if you want to build a real business. And so the inspiration for the academy really was birthed out of the fact that I got to a place inside of my business where it didn't require, I got to that someday that I thought I never realized I could get to, which was I had time and the business is throwing off money and it didn't need me. Now, what am I going to do? And I've always had a passion for educating and helping and supporting. I get as much, I think, personal self-worth out of helping other people as I do out of helping myself and making money and things like that, right? Oh, yeah. And so the academy really came out of hey, guys, I figured it out. I figured out how to make money in the deck business and how to have some time and not work the long hours and miss the vacations and neglect my body and neglect my wife and my kids, that I'm doing it for them, right? Everybody says I'm doing it for them. But the reality is it's someday just doesn't come for most guys. And so I got to that point where someday was here and I decided I want to share this with other people. And so I took what my coach is, because I had worked with multiple coaches by that point, what they've taught me on the personal development side of things, on the professional development side of things. And my wife and I decided that we're going to just package it up and share it with other deck builders. And I do deck builders because that's what I know. My coach didn't have a deck business, so he couldn't help me solve the deck specific problems or the fence specific problems. So he helped me with the business problems, because business translates regardless. And so now that I've got the formula, if you will, to how to grow and scale and systematize a deck business, I'm super excited to be able to share that and fill my current office here with academy members, other deck builders that are just trying to figure out how to find that someday, how to track down that business rather than the job, and capitalize on the time and the money that we all get into business for in the first place, which ultimately translates to lifestyle. And so I know it's a long answer to what inspired me to do it, but I figured it out and I was I got this thing, I want to give it to other people. So that's kind of the inspiration behind the academy.
Gotcha. And I'm curious too, with those coaches and maybe with your academy, I mean, the personal development side, like I was saying, we talked about that quite a bit. Did your coaches stress that? Because I believe you are going to say that I know that's a big focus for you, but were you taught that to like, work on your personal development? Like, was that a big thing for you before you kind of made that big transformation? Or
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first coaches I hired back in 2017, he kind of tricks you into his ecosystem by talking about business and money. But then once you get there, he gives you what you actually need, which is like, you need to take care of this vessel that God gave you, your body. You need to fuel it and do some fitness for it, right? So your body. You also need to work on your mindset here, because most of us are our worst critic. And we would not let someone else talk to us the way that we talk to ourselves. So you got to work on your mindset, and then you got to work on your relationships, your wife, your kids, the people important in your life if you're not married. And so that my business coach basically is like, hey, if you figure out your body, your mindset, your relationships, business will get easier and things will happen for you. And that's really the reality of what it was. So yes, to answer your question, it was a huge focus early on. At the time, I was not, my mindset wasn't right. My relationship, my wife and my kids, I'm like, hey guys, I'll be there someday. I'll be there someday. I just got to figure out this money thing first.
yeah,
And my body, like right now I'm 200 pounds. When 2017, I was 172 pounds. Right. So I've literally put on almost 30 pounds, but I still maintain like a 9% body fat. Right. So,
nice.
and what that does is it creates a culture of growth in your organization and attracts people. People want to be a part of that. So
Yeah.
I hear, guys that come into the academy, they're struggling with hiring people or finding people, or their culture is like, our culture stinks. I'm like, you got to look in the mirror. Like, who are you? How are you showing up? And
Yep.
so for me, our culture is a direct reflection of me. We have a
Yep.
culture of fitness. We have a culture of nutrition. We have a culture of, positive mindset. We have a culture of family first. And those are the people that I attract into my organization. So yes, to answer your question, like personal development is a huge thing. And I kind of do that. I do that with my academy members too. Like I get them in on the business side of things, but then they get all the intangible benefits of the body, the mindset, the
Yeah.
relationships, all those other things. Some of the courses inside of the Academy Vault, where we house our courses, are specifically on what I call the core four, which is your body, your mindset, your relationships, and your business, right? In my language, it's body, being, balance, and business. And so they get access to that as well, whether they want it or not. It's entirely up to them. So when they come here for their quarterly events, guess what we do on morning number 2? We do a 6:30 a.m. group workout. Everybody goes
Nice.
to the gym I work out at, and my trainers put us through a super hard workout. So yeah,
Right.
it's a huge focus inside of Legacy Dex and inside of the academy.
Awesome. Yeah. And you mentioned something just briefly that I really wanted to bring up because it was something that was really huge for me, I guess. And that was um, ownership, I guess. So I think everybody is kind of like originally programmed to kind of blame other people for other things. I don't know. Maybe some people aren't, but like when I grew up, it wouldn't be like I would just say everything was my fault, far from it.
Right.
But like learning from other people, my mentors, coaches and things like that. Also just reading, like Extreme Ownership. Have you ever read that from Jocko Willing?
It's one of the core books I mail out to all my new members in their welcome pack is Extreme
Yeah.
Ownership. Yeah, I love that book.
Yeah. And when it breaks it down, it makes so much sense. And even though I guess it kind of sucks to begin with, like when you first think about it, because you're like, oh God, it's all my fault. What am I going to do? But it also just allows you to figure out, I guess have the power to figure out how to fix it. And yeah, it's not, you don't feel helpless, I guess. So with all like business stuff, I hope my team would agree, and I think they would, because I'm pretty intentional about it, is, if something's not clear or something came back to me not clear, it's because whatever I coached them on, or whatever SOP I created just wasn't clear enough, and I didn't account for those things. And the more I do that, the more other people do that as well. So it just kind of creates a nice, I guess, culture internally where everyone's not like blaming everybody for everything. They kind of hold their own, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my vocabulary, in my world, my team considers themselves all entrepreneurs, right? They're an entrepreneur inside of my organization, and that speaks to ownership, right? They take personally the goals that we have in the business, the time that it takes to achieve the goals, and they get rewarded for that as well. So we have a super strong culture of entrepreneurs here at Legacy Dex.
Gotcha. Okay. And I feel like you kind of touched on this, but if you had to say like how you coach, in the academy, I mean, do you have any kind of like coaching philosophy you could kind of define or anything unique in that regard? You touched on it a little bit, but maybe.
Yeah. So, as far as a philosophy inside of Legacy Decks Academy, it's really kind of rooted in my own practical experience. My company, Legacy Decks, is where I test everything that I share with my Academy members. So essentially, I was my first client. I was my first Academy client. So unlike a lot of coaches out there, which right, wrong, or indifferent, we actively run a successful deck business. And oh, by the way, we coach other deck builders that want to be a part of that as well. So we're kind of giving firsthand relevant insights to, like, sometimes stuff's not working right now and we course correct. And then I share with them, hey, we've been doing this, it's been working, now it's not, we're going to do this. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is it's really rooted in practical experience. There's no theory here. You can come see my operation, my academy, my people come and see the operation. So
yeah, leading by example. And like you said, there's so many coaches that coach on something they've never done. I mean, there's a lot of, I guess professors and stuff that did too.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I remember
you can't do teach.
Yeah. What's the other one? If you can't teach, or if you can't teach, you teach gym. I think it was.
All right, not to offend any gym teachers.
Yeah, sorry if I'm offending anyone. But yeah, I remember in school I had a entrepreneurial class or whatever, and the guy didn't have a business, and I was like, what are we learning from you? What, like, it just makes absolutely no sense. Like, why would we bother learning that hasn't done it? But okay, so as somebody goes through your program, how do you measure like improvement, success? Like, how do you keep tabs on all that?
Yeah, so we actually, the structure of the program starts with a 3-day intensive where they come here to the academy and we literally build out their entire business operating system, version 1. And all of that is housed in a software platform that we run off of called 90.io. And essentially it's a dashboard. All of their core values go in there, their 1-year plan, their 3-year plan, their 90-day targets. We build a scorecard for them. So we build out their first version of their scorecard, which is like, what are the most important numbers that you need to know as an entrepreneur inside of the primary functions of the business, inside of marketing, inside of sales, inside of operations, and inside of finance. And we build a first version of their scorecard. We obviously have the hack for that because we know what numbers matter to us as a deck owner. Some companies are slightly different, but you need to know your leads. You need to know how many appointments you ran or how many appointments you booked, how many you ran. You need to know close ratios. So we have the scorecard is kind of the biggest thing that all of our key performance indicators, if you want to use that vocabulary. But essentially, most entrepreneurs that I work with don't really have a clear plan or a scorecard to track it back to. And like, imagine you went to a football game and you went to your seats and there's no scoreboard. Like, how many people would be really excited about sitting and watching the game? Well, that's how a lot of these business owners are the same way. It's like, we're just going to sell as much as we can, collect as much as we can, and hope there's some money left at the end. Well, I've played that game and usually there's no money left at the end, so.
Yeah. And then I guess you can start offering discounts and things like that. Your numbers are not based off of your profit goals too, and all that stuff. So
that's the other thing is like, when they come here in that first 3 days, we get them super clear about what their margins and their markup need to be. Because there's way too many people out there. They're surveying the industry and saying, hey, what are you charging? What are you charging? What's your margin? What's your markup? It's irrelevant. Like, there's 3 numbers that they need to know to determine their markup. They need to know, number 1, how much revenue can you actually do this year? What's your target profit that you want to make? And what's the cost that it's going to take to get those things done? And if you know those numbers, we can determine what you need to mark up your cost to be able to make the profit that you want to make. And so it's really, I hate when people come in and they're like, well, this guy's charging a 50% gross profit. That's fine. But what's his net? Is he targeting 20% net? Because if he is, and you only need to target 10%, you can charge a 40% GP and don't have to worry about it. So again, most of these people are, and I put myself in there as well. We were craftsmen first that took our craft and we turned it into a business. And now we have to learn how to do 17 other things. We have to learn how to market. We have to learn how to do numbers. We have to learn how to hire. We have to learn how to, track our costs. It's tough. So.
Yeah. And you mentioned keeping track of, number of leads and things like that. Do you guys use any like tracking system, like tracking numbers at all to use, keep track of your different marketing forms that you use?
So as far as, are you referring to like where the leads come in through?
Yeah. So like, I don't know. Have you ever heard of like CallRail, What Converts, or like softwares that use tracking numbers to like really know, because you can ask people where this lead come from, but
Yeah.
Who knows?
So we do,
right?
but all that's done through our CRM, which we've created our own CRM called On Deck that we share with all of our deck builders. And it's built on the Go High Level platform.
Yeah.
And so inside of that, we can do the different numbers. And then on the Google ads, I believe we have different landing pages and numbers as well that go with that. So
yep. Yeah. High level is great. Yeah. It lets you do all that stuff. So, okay. Any kind of, I don't know, what would you say the most common problems are, when somebody comes to you and they're like, I need help. I know we touched on a lot of things, but is there anything that really stands out that you're like, I hear this every time, or, most times?
Yeah. So, I mean, common problems that I see majority of the time is they're not profitable. And because they're not profitable, a lot of times they're having to rob Peter to pay Paul, right? Like a lot of people that I talk to are in this position where they can't finish the last project because they did a bad job estimating it, and not a bad job. They just didn't know how to estimate it right. And so now they got to collect the deposit from the next job to be able to finish the last job. And it's like a hamster wheel that you just don't want to get on. So that's one. But another common problem is like most of these people are wearing multiple hats inside of the company. One of the hardest things for me to do with a deck builder that wants me to help them scale is to help them scale if they still have the tools on, if they're still bags on. If you're out there in the field actively building decks, building fences, whatever, it's really hard for me to help you scale unless you're willing to get those off as quick as possible, right? I have an Academy member that is just going into his second year with us. And when he came in, the prior year, he had done $400,000 in revenue. He came in and started working with us. He ended up closing out the year almost at 800,000, so doubled. But which is great. But more importantly than that, within 6 months of starting to work with us, he was able to take his bags off, come out of the field, and actually start working on the business. Now, this year, I just checked his numbers this year. We're 5 months into the year, and he's almost at $700,000 in sales already. So he's on track to double again this year. Nice. Not only that, he's brought his guys out of the field. So 2 of his carpenters that were in the field building, now one of them is a project manager, one of them's a project coordinator, and he's hired an admin assistant that works in their office, and they're in the process of getting an actual office, right? This was a guy that was $400,000 in revenue, bags on, building in the field. And then within 12 months of starting to work with us, like this is the team, 12 to 18 months, this is the team that he looks like. And, he's almost tripled his revenue. He's on that trend anyways right now. So like that's biggest problem is like, if your bag's on, if you're wearing all the hats inside of the business, it's hard to really scale something like that. And so, that's probably some of the bigger challenges. Also, I guess another one is like, I already mentioned it briefly, but they don't know how to price projects. Because they're not super clear on their overhead costs. They don't know what their labor rates need to be. They don't have a target profit. They just want to make an income for themselves. And so a lot of times they don't know how to charge the right number. And so that's when they're fishing for numbers from other contractors or searching Facebook groups. Like, what do you charge? What do you charge? It doesn't matter. Like, what's your overhead? Because the reality is like with my overhead right now in my business, it's well over $1 million in overhead. Some chuck in a truck, as I call him, could come and underbid me on a deck project because he has no overhead. Right. Yep. And so to say that like this guy that's got no overhead should charge what I'm charging. So that's a big problem is these guys just don't know what to charge. And so at the Academy, that's again, the first 3 days here, we get we hammer out a first version of their budget, what their markup needs to be, so that then they can confidently go out, meet with the customer. As long as they know how to estimate the labor materials, they can multiply it by that markup factor that we help them with and go out and bid that project. So that's my main goal, is to have them leave here confidently being able to estimate a project based on what the revenue needs to be. So,
yeah. And that's something I hear constantly too, is like you said, chucking the truck, undercutting your prices. So I would love to hear how you've dealt with that, how you coach that. I mean, when people are worried about that, I mean, what do you typically say to them?
I mean, that all comes down to marketing, right? And so you know a lot about that. So one of the other things we do that we rate them on and we help them with is you have got to have a cohesive brand, right? You obviously see like branding is very important to me. And so what's your website look like? Is your vehicle wrapped? Do you have swag? Do you have, literature? Do you have a proven process? Like, so to position yourself as an expert is really one of the biggest things. And it doesn't cost a ton to do that, but it does cost something that should be in your overhead cost. But the biggest way that we combat the chuck in the truck or any competition is we're super clear about who we are as a brand. And we're more of a luxury brand, if you will. And so our marketing weeds out the people that would hire chuck in a truck. People that would hire chuck in a truck don't call us. They go to our website and they're like, wow, I can't afford these guys. I'm not even gonna call them. Like literally, we put pricing on our website. If you go to Legacy Decks and legacydecks.com, you'll see we've got tiered pricing. Hey, this project was about this much. This one was about this much. And our lowest level, when somebody goes to our contact form to say, hey, what's your budget? It starts at 15,000. We've had people call the office and say, hey, like I wanted to get you guys out, but the budget, I can't put anything on here. Well, that's because our minimum's 15,000. Right. And so anyways, back to the question that you said is like, how do you deal with that? Is we try to let our marketing filter out as many of the people that would hire chuck in a truck. We're super clear about the psychographic of our person. Our person is somebody that enjoys an experience. They enjoy buying the finer things inside of life. They have some expendable income. They're not hiring chuck in a truck because they're scared of chuck in a truck.
Yeah, I love that. And just like you said, if you have somebody's Googling deck builder near me or trying to find someone and they see some like rundown website or they see somebody with like 5 reviews or something, I mean, instantly they're thinking, all right, this guy's probably going to be cheaper. I mean, that's just a guarantee. So if you have a more elaborate brand, a stronger brand, people are seeing you everywhere. The guys show up in uniforms, they look sound, they talk well. They're not showing up in, I've had contractors that show up in like athletic shorts and a t-shirt, neither of which match the company. And I'm like, instantly like you're down here, you're down here. So that's I love that. And that's what I'm always preaching. So I'm glad that it matched up with how you coach people too. So that's fantastic. And I'm curious. So all right, so you have these guys come in, they need help, you're coaching them, you're helping them grow the business. In terms of like personalization, I mean, how would you say, how does that work? Is it typically like I'm sure you have systems they have to reuse, of course, but is there any kind of like personalization? How does that work with the academy?
Yeah, so there's no one size fits all to what we do at the academy. It's a custom plan based on the ingredients that you currently have, right? Whether you're bags on or I've got deck builders that have been in the business for decades that are still doing all their sales and project management and wearing all the hats. So it just depends where they're at. So that's why when we do our initial kickoff, we only allow up to 4 companies in the room. So I've got 3,000 square foot here in the academy. We've got about 120 foot of whiteboards. If you go on my social media, you might be able to see some of that. And we literally build out 4 custom plans for 4 different deck builders. Sometimes there's only 1 deck builder in a kickoff session. And so it's really specific to them. So I'll give you an example. When we build out their core values, everybody's core values are based on the core of who that person is. A lot of people try to develop core values and it's like, well, they try to, I'd like to be this. I'd like to be like team first and family first and, all in, but like, are you currently? And so we really, it's a total custom plan. Same thing with scorecards. Some guys' scorecard numbers are different than others for sure. So everybody's plan is slightly different. Now, when we do our quarterly events, we bring the whole community together as a whole, which is a super powerful event because they get perspective from all these different markets of what's working, what's not working. So as far as the strategy goes, they come in for 3 solid days, 8-hour days. We do throw workouts in there too. And we map out a custom plan for them. It all goes into the software platform. I do a one-on-one meeting with all of our clients once a month, and I can literally see all their dashboard. I've got a whiteboard desk that I'm working on right here, and I had that call yesterday, and I literally had like what's working, what's not working for all of my members based on their scorecard. I can see their dashboard, whether their sales are up or down, if their draws are up or down, like their production needs to go faster, their sales need to ramp up, they're not getting enough leads, things like that. So, the more data that we have, the better able we are to steer the ship. But also, I think it's super important for, people to get in this container of accountability, right? Like, I'm more likely to do the things I say I'm going to do if I tell Alex, hey, Alex, I'm going to go out and I'm going to pound out and get, 1,000 leads or 1,000 reviews before we talk again, right? And then every week you connect back up with me. How many did you get? How many did you get? Right. And so that's really the value of the community and the academy, is like the accountability piece. So we've got there's plenty of coaching that they get. There's plenty of content and courses that they get, but the community is really one of the most valuable pieces, and also the accountability.
Yeah. And that's so true, and something you don't really think about before you join a coaching group, mastermind, whatever, an academy, as yours is called. But you kind of sit there and you're like, all right, if I spend a little money here, that's less money I can spend on this. But in the reality, if you're not part of a group and you're trying to build something, it just gets lonely. It's just like, you don't have people that can understand the same frustrations. Two, you just kind of slack off, quite honestly. Like, I know if I'm getting on Facebook and I see other people, talking about the issues they have or saying, wins, things like that, it kind of keeps me in the game and keeps me focused. Whereas, if you're a business owner, technically you can do whatever you want. Not really. That's kind of a lie anyways, but you can go and do something, or you can like sit on your phone and just kind of lay back and for a little bit of time. But if you see other people doing it, motivating you, have some kind of motivating force like that, you just, you don't really realize that until you realize how bad it is without having it, I guess.
Well, and the other thing that I run into as far as like obstacles with people is getting them over that obstacle of like investing in themselves. Like, you're the number one asset that you have. You shouldn't be investing in stocks or bonds or until you invest in you first. Yep. And so, the investment in the academy, we have two different offers that we have. One of them is like less than a cup of coffee a day. And the other one is probably the cost of having a $20 an hour employee. But I guarantee you that the savings that you will make from the lessons we will help you to avoid would be well worth it. Just getting your markup right and charging the numbers you should be charging, identifying your target market, knowing where what areas of marketing you should be fishing in, like that's hugely valuable. But that's an obstacle that we have to help people get to overcome, because I tell people this all the time, is like, the school of hard knocks is a real thing, and the tuition is really expensive. Right. I have paid way more in the tuition of the School of Hard Knocks than I've paid to any coach or mentor. And I've probably spent close to 7 figures on coaching and mentoring in the last 6-7 years. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that time spent on your business, if you pay for that coaching group, you're going to be invested. You're not spending money on whatever else you spend your money on. Yeah. So it's so hard to like calculate that, but like, it's like,
if time matters to you, and you want to do it faster, why not follow somebody that's already solved the problems that you're trying to solve, right? We can take what would normally take you 3, 4, 5 years and do it in 12 months if you put yourself into this container and save yourselves hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's the reality of getting involved in a community like that. And so if time matters to you, I highly recommend you get into some kind of a community like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, if somebody wants to work with you, I mean, do you have a minimum size business, a maximum size? I mean, who can work with you, and how's that work?
Yeah, no. So we've got two primary programs. We've got the Academy Pro program, which is typically for deck builders that are under $1 million, maybe even $500,000, from 0 to $1 million, let's say. And in the Pro program, we give them access to 3 or 4 primary courses: time management, how to put together a plan for the year. I give them my personal development program as well. I give them a sample score, not a sample, but a template for how to build out a scorecard. It's got all the numbers that I think are the most important. So they get access to that. They also get a weekly call inside of a community. And so that's one program that we have. And then the other program, which is going to be typically for deck builders that are $1 million plus, is our Inner Circle. And inside the Inner Circle is where you come to the academy essentially for 12 days a year. You're in person with us. We build out your plan. You get access to the software platform. Yeah, and there's more information on that on the website. You go to legacydecksacademy.com and find out all about that stuff. So, but we essentially have a program that fits everybody's budget, and I've had some guys absolutely crush it inside of both programs. But obviously, the direct one-on-one access is the what makes the most sense typically for a builder that's $1 million plus. So,
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. And so since I got to ask some marketing questions about this. I'm curious. So when somebody joins the academy, what different types of marketing do you typically recommend? I mean, is there anything you dive
sure.
into and just look at and then recommend?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to speak from my level of marketing knowledge, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
But again, no, that's great. But one of the we have a roadmap that maps out all the things that are important, and it starts with what I already talked about before, which is you've got to have a cohesive brand. So what does your branding look like? From there, we go to the website. What does the website look like? Does the website function the way that it should? Then we look at their Google My Business. Make sure their Google profile is built out the way that it needs to be built out. And then from there, we get super clear about their ideal client. So if you're going to, most of the time, they're going to eventually work with a marketing company like you guys. And if you could hand them like, hey, this is the geographic, the psychographic, and the demographic of our customer, can you help us find them? So we get them super clear about that. We go through a whole whiteboard session where we're identifying like who's the target market that we're after, which that's super helpful as well. And then beyond that, we try to have, because we've got this community of people, everybody's got different relationships. And so we try to get some industry specific experts like yourself, subject matter experts in to talk about and promote like, hey, what makes the most sense? Should I be advertising in Google ads yet? Should I be doing Facebook ads? Does my SEO need to be ramped up? Obviously that's a longer play. But yeah, so essentially that's kind of the strategy, but it all kind of starts with some of the free stuff. I say free, but like make sure the brand's on point, website. A lot of these guys have to build out a new website right out of the gate. So
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think you said this, but you're talking about like going after the right area. Do you ever, the right demographics and things like that? Do you ever have that? Do you ever recommend them, move locations or open up an office in a different location if it's in a very rural place with, I've seen like 200 people in a city that somebody's has their business located in, which is severely limiting. So
it's not that common. However, there are some case studies that I can point to that it's something that we look at as it's like we're fighting an uphill battle. You're in a super rural area. It's hard to be niche specific. So some of the guys that are in those smaller markets tend to also do renovation projects or fence projects or, so they're trying to be a deck builder specific, but it's like, there's just not enough of that business in their market. And so, we have talked at least to one member about like other locations that he's interested in moving his family to based on kids and things like that. And if you're listening, you know who you are. So I think you should move to Florida. But anyways, so that is a conversation that we look at because we have this scorecard. I can see what's going on, the leads that are coming in, how many appointments they're booking, what their sales are, close ratios. And sometimes it's just, the target that we're trying to achieve is super difficult to reach because of the lead flow that we got. And, no matter how much marketing we throw at it, there's just not a big enough need for it in some rural areas. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned some case studies and you shared one. I mean, any other case studies like members, things like that you're willing to share? I don't know if it's confidential.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we've got it all over the board. We've got companies that are, like the one I just mentioned that was under 400,000, that'll probably do $1.5 million this year in the last 2 years. Bags off, like that's a great story. But then we've also got people that come in that are 2 decades, 3 decades. I've got one company that is 52 years old and a second generation owner. And when they came to me, they were essentially making less than minimum wage. A couple, the two of them combined, they were making less than minimum wage. Wow. And after they started working with us in the first year, we were able to double their personal income. The revenue increased slightly, but they doubled their personal income because we got their numbers figured out, their budget, and what they should be charging. Most of the time, they just charged what their dad used to charge, and that's like decades old. It's like, why do you charge that? Well, because that's what dad used to charge. Oh my gosh, we can't do that. And so that particular case there, we moved their markup from a 1.25 to 1.44, which is still kind of low in my book. Pretty low, actually. And in one particular project that they did, it was a condominium project. They made an additional $300,000 over what they would have made had they sold it at their normal markup. They would have lost money on it previously. Now, fast forward even further, this company never had a showroom. They just opened up their first showroom in August of last year. And
Nice.
this is the really exciting part. They got to the end of last year, which was their second year working with us. And they had so much money stockpiled in their profit account, because we also teach, profit first. If you're familiar with Mike Michalowicz, we teach that model of profit first. And they had so much money compound in their profit account that they had to hire a tax strategist last year. They had to buy some things and shift some money and take some distributions. So that's what really excites me. It's like just seeing families win. But that's a case study there where they came in, they could have made more money, I told them, working at Waffle House than they could own in this deck business this is doing several $1 million when they came to us, but not making enough money to pay themselves. Not only that, they had leveraged their house to the tune of several six figures, which I hear that a lot of times too. And so, that's another super big win. But again, business doesn't get any easier. You get better, and then business gets easier, right? So that's the reality. Like I'm helping people like improve every area of their life, and the business stuff just gets easier. You attract the right people to your team. The universe just kind of sees your efforts and responds to that. So that those kinds of things. And I've got several stories like that, where even just tweaking people's numbers gets them to a place where they're able to pay themselves what they should be making, and that gets to be exciting. So
yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure it's just exciting to see how, I guess, the systems that you can help them with and save them time, see them grow. I mean, it's got to be very fulfilling too, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So
It's not super sexy, but doing the boring, everyday, mundane things, doing it long enough and right, it just works, right? Like the work works on you more than you work on it, I think, is a Hormozy saying. So
yeah, I think that is the biggest game changer, is just like, because sometimes you compare it and you're like, oh, someone like you're very, outgoing. And, in the very beginning, you were saying that it's not all, perfect by any means. You got your own struggles. And I think, when you're in business, everybody kind of looks like that, because everybody shares their wins for the most part.
Right.
So you kind of just feel like, you just kind of think like, what am I doing wrong? Or I'm not cut out for this. And what it boils down to, that I've found, is like, you're never going to just have fun, like, with everything you do. Like, there's no way you get to the point you want by just doing everything you love, unless you're, I don't know, maybe there's some situations there, but I really doubt it. You got to just continuously do things every day, get better every day in very tiny increments, usually, to kind of get where you want. And it's a lot of times it's boring. It's not the most fun thing in the world.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, exactly.
that's what it takes. So, okay. So if somebody does want to join the Academy or just get information about it, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can go to the website, which is legacydecksacademy.com. You can also look me up on Instagram. My Instagram is official Chris Breen. So those would be the best places to, there's a hockey player named Chris Breen that owns my my IG. So I have the official Chris Breen.
Nice.
So
okay, perfect. And last thing, so is there anything you would say, if somebody's trying to get to that next level, really growing? I know we've touched on a lot of things, but what would you just say? Joining your group would probably be a great option too, but anything that you could say to somebody trying to take it the next level, like, here's what I would do first, and kind of go from there.
So let's see. Somebody trying to take it to the next level. I would say that most deck builders and outdoor living professionals as a whole, they're willing to invest in whatever tool they need to get the job done. And I would challenge them that the first tool that they should be investing in is themselves.
Yeah.
In their education, in their mindset, in their fitness. Like, you need to be the sharpest tool that you can be, because you're the number one asset to your business. So that would be my encouragement to people. Okay.
Anything additional you'd like to share? Some additional wisdom or anything about the Academy before we kind of wrap it up?
No, I think that's about it, man. Like I said before, like if time matters to you, and most of us, like, we're starved for time. my whole goal with what we do at the Academy, and whether you work with me or another coach, like find someone to help you turn your job into a business. And that's really ultimately like the best thing that you could do, is to find someone that can help you compress the time. Because the people that I work with at the Academy, they'll all get there, I think, someday. But the ones that work with us, or any other coach, if you work with someone else, they want to get there faster and avoid the obstacles and avoid the painful mistakes that cost them lots of money. So that's the biggest thing, is like find somebody that you resonate with. We're not for everybody, right? And so we don't, not just anybody gets to write a check and become a part of the Academy. Like we have kind of a 2-call process that we go through to even let people through the door. We have a fit meeting first, and then after that we talk about a specific strategy for your business. So, but that's the biggest thing I would say. If time matters to you, find a way to do it faster. And the best way I found to do that is to follow in somebody else's footsteps that's walked through the minefield.
Gotcha. Now, is there a exercising challenge to join? Is there a bench press minimum, pull up requirement?
I mean, I'm like a 4-time 75 hard graduate. I've never
Nice.
I've never done phase 1 or 2 or any of those, but I have done 75 hard several times. And it, as hard as, if you don't know what it is, go look it up. But you have to add like 7 or 8 other things into your day in addition to what you already do. I've found that it keeps me more focused and saying no to things that I should say no to, because I've committed every day to do this thing, to drink the water, to do the 2 workouts, to read the 10 pages. And sometimes you have to say no to things, or else you won't do it. You won't have the time to do it. And then you're going to miss a day and you got to start over. And we like to win as entrepreneurs. So not saying that's the way to go, but like 75 hard, it takes a lot of time. It's a big commitment. Sometimes I've committed to it. My wife's been like, you're going to do what? Like, cause it affects your whole family and your world. But I want to be the example to my kids and to my world of what's possible. And so, my thing I have on my garage door in my gym is like, who will they become if I'm the example of what's possible?
Ooh,
and
like
so,
that.
anyway, 75 hard, try it out. I think you'll like it. It'll force you to say no to things that you probably should be saying no to anyways, and own your calendar. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. 4 times. Andy Frisella is the guy who created that. If anyone's interested, he's got a podcast too called Real AF. It originally started, I mean, there's some political stuff on there too that he's got there, but it's a lot of personal development. All of his, I mean, he's probably if I could meet anybody, he might be like the top of the list because of what he's done for me and my business and my life in general. So if anybody listening knows him, and I probably can't afford it if I have to pay, but I'll do what I can to meet Andy one day if anybody knows him. So that's basically all the stuff I had for Chris. I think that was a fantastic podcast. I mean, everything we talked about, I know was providing a lot of value to everybody that's listening. And going forward with this podcast, I'm constantly looking for additional people that I can bring in, industry experts, successful business owners, really anything that I think may help fencing or decking owners. So that's what I'm going to keep doing. I haven't done a lot of the one-on-ones where I'm just kind of talking, and I think I just did a lot of those in the beginning, and I'll continue those if need be. But I really like bringing on people like Chris that can share a lot of really valuable information. And if you do like this podcast, feel free to leave a review and subscribe. That will be super helpful as well. And if you do need help with any of your marketing, if you just want someone to talk to about your deck business, your fence business, anything that we can do to help, happens all the time where people call us that are likely not a good fit, not quite the area where they could, maybe handle a lead flow, but I'm always happy to talk with people, give them a plan, give them first steps and things to do. So that's kind of our initiative with Fence and Deck Marketers, is really provide value. So thanks again, Chris, for coming on here. This was awesome. We'll be talking soon.
All right. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Alex.
Yep.